Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and yeah, normally I don't make a follow-up video like this, but yeah, the PlayStation scam is a lot worse than I actually thought of. Now to give a quick idea about it, ladies and gentlemen, the PS5 Pro got announced yesterday, and I made a video where I said it is not worth the 700 US dollars that Sony is asking for it. Now, if you think that was a joke, the $700, no. This is from an actual official Sony press release, okay? They basically showed this PlayStation 5, and they brought up the fact that, yes, it's 700 US, 700 Great British Pounds, and for some reason, 800 euros, okay? Now, meaning that if you're in Canada, like me, for instance, in my land, before taxes, okay, this is $950, $60. After taxes, just the console alone is costing you $1,000. Now, to give one quick idea over here, this is getting to a point where it's so expensive that you might as well consider joining the world of PC gaming, okay? When I was younger, okay, I used to justify consoles because overall it really was a cheaper barrier of entry to just playing the video games you wanted to play with your friends. Like for instance, back in the day, if I wanted to play Oblivion, instead of dealing with building a computer, especially during a time when PC gaming wasn't even as popular as it was nowadays, it was easier to just buy an Xbox 360, stick a copy of Oblivion in, and play the game even if it was at 30 frames per second. The game ran fine enough, and you could play through all of Oblivion, right? And that's pretty much how most of my gaming was done for a period of my life. Now, honestly, when it was a PlayStation 4 generation, I was playing most of my video games on consoles. Heck, the entire reason the Shenmue video got made was because I was literally just playing that video game on my PlayStation to begin with. Even though I had these games on my PC, it was just more convenient for me to load them up on a PlayStation 4 and just record my footage off of them without having to deal with going onto my PC, setting up OBS settings for it, and dealing with all of that nonsense. Hitting one button and letting my system record for hours at a time was pretty awesome. Now, PlayStation 5 is one of those systems where it's pretty much one of the most boring upgrades, literally almost like an iterative upgrade over the PlayStation 4. So, like I said in yesterday's video, the PlayStation 5 generation is not that impressive from a gaming perspective, okay? Not a lot of these games, at least the exclusive ones, they're not really at a quantity or really anything that's blowing me away. You know, when we started with the PlayStation 4 generation, there were games like Killzone Shadowfall that absolutely pushed the system to its limit right before it even released. And that's impressive to see. Nowadays with PlayStation 5, it really felt like Demon's Souls, which was a remake of a PlayStation 3 game, pretty much shot for shot. While yes, it looked pretty, didn't really blow me away from a gameplay perspective. I'm somebody that cares more about the gameplay now than I ever really cared about just the visual aspect. I have a PC for visual games, but generally if the gameplay for something isn't really grabbing me, it doesn't matter how pretty it looks. So looking at the price again, and the PlayStation 5, which quite literally is ribbed for her pleasure with these fucking stripes on the side, I wanted to see just how good of a value this actually was. So there's been a bit of speculation as to what parts have been inside the system, and that, I'll just straight up say, is very much speculation. Whether you get it from me, whether you get this information from Digital Foundry, whether you get it from anyone doing analysis, you don't really know what the true extent of the hardware is, because the only one with that documentation is Sony. But I decided to go to PC Part Picker and just quickly put together a system that was roughly equivalent to what I expected out of the PlayStation system. Now, one thing that was interesting, and the reason why I wanted to revisit this video this quickly, is because according to Sony's release, nothing in this upgrade list talks about a CPU. So one of the things that I mentioned last time was, you know, a game like Grand Theft Auto 6, which is most likely dropping next year, hopefully, you know, maybe there's a 60 FPS version on the PS5 Pro. There's probably not going to be a 60 FPS version. With open world games, the most important aspect of them is the constant, real-time tick that happens with the CPU. To render thousands of NPCs, or at least the amount of NPCs that were in the GTA 5 trailer, to render those things and the logic and the world and the vehicles and just the logic of Vice City running per second on your device requires a lot of CPU power, right? Now, PlayStation 5 was already something that, while yes, it was a big upgrade over the PlayStation 4 generation, I don't think it's going to run GTA 6 at 60 frames per second. I just don't really think it's that possible. Now, of course, if you're not upgrading the CPU, there's a pretty good chance that the game is just going to be running at 30 frames, even on the PS5 Pro, except the only difference is the ray tracing might be better, and the game will run at a higher resolution, okay? How much will you notice that as you play the game with the cops chasing you as you're doing story missions, playing online? I think that really depends on the person. But as somebody that's been gaming for goddamn near my entire life, I can tell you something right now. Usually when you're in motion and sitting that far away from your television, because this is a video game console, you're probably not going to notice the difference between like 4K or something like 1440p or 1800p or any of these resolutions, especially if that resolution keeps fluctuating as you play the game in a dynamic fashion. So to go back to PC Part Picker, because they never upgraded the CPU, I decided to throw in a Ryzen 7 3700X, which I believe is pretty much the equivalent of what you expect with a base PlayStation 5 anyways, and what you'd expect with the PlayStation 5 Professional. I decided to put in the CPU cooler, which again, it wasn't really that crazy extravagant expensive. The motherboard, I gave it 32 gigabytes of memory versus 16 gigabytes because I figured with PC gaming, with PC stuff, you probably want to be at least a bit higher than consoles, okay? Just in terms of memory. I decided for storage, I wanted to match what the PlayStation 5 was bringing, and I gave it 2 terabytes for $117. When it came to the video card, I decided the best approximation was a RTX 3070. Given the fact that the PlayStation 5 Pro is supposed to be better at ray tracing, like something around 3 times what the original system is supposed to be, and of course, the actual system will, just have 45% better compute for whatever reason, for their metrics. I figure the best equivalent here would probably be the RTX 3070. And then going down further, there was a case, and of course, a 750 watt power supply. All of this totaling to around $1,194. Now, given the fact that, usually with a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Nintendo product, to play online, you got to pay for a subscription, you got to pay for a proprietary controller. This amount of money that you're seeing, kind of roughly equals out. One of the biggest issues I made in the last video was showcasing Best Buy off-the-shelf builds, which usually came with a pretty substantial labor convenience fee. But this, I think, is something that, pretty much is as close to the... Now, yes, this is a more performant system, and obviously it costs a bit more. But remember, I could save around $200 off of this if I chose to go back down to 16 gigs of RAM. Maybe I got a weaker graphic card. Maybe I went down to Ryzen 5 or something, right, instead of 7. But remember, this is a bit more performant. I would say a fair amount more performant than what the PS5 Pro is offering. And with all of this, you do have the option of, again, cutting down this into a more reasonable budget, close to the PlayStation 5 if you chose to downgrade certain parts. But I chose to keep it a bit future-proof because I feel like, when you're in this market, you probably want to spend a little bit more, get a more performant system, because it isn't just about playing video games with PC gaming. So if you're somebody that wants to, be a content creator in the video game space, it might be better for you to buy this system setup versus just going out of your way to buy a singular gaming console that you can just play video games on, but maybe not be able to produce content with the same level of quality that you would expect with a PC. Now, I didn't factor in an operating system or a monitor because ultimately when you're buying a console, you're factoring in the TV and the monitor separately. And nobody buys Windows, okay? No psychopath that I know of purchases a Windows license, okay? Usually people just go to Microsoft Windows, download the ISO file, and install it onto their system. That's why nearly in every gameplay recording video you see from any of your favorite fucking YouTubers, you'll probably notice activate Windows at the bottom right, or they'll edit it in a way where it doesn't appear. You see, I don't really believe anybody purchases Windows. If you do buy Windows, you are a very, very rare exception that I've noticed, okay? Because ain't nobody fucking buying any of these weird Windows 11 Pro licenses, okay? It's just how it is. I haven't bought Windows in 6 years, okay? And if you're using Linux, even better, okay? Even better. You don't have to worry about licenses. And if you're just installing Linux, maybe instead of the NVIDIA graphic card, go for the AMD stuff because they just work a whole lot better underneath the Penguin. So yeah, looking at this system right over here, I can confidently say that the PlayStation Pro is definitely a scam product. And given the fact that this is not a console, these specific units, these specific pieces of hardware can be overclocked and run far in excess of whatever these consoles are doing, because your method of cooling and your method of, keeping these systems running in a sane temperature is a lot better, is a lot more, optimized towards your end. So one of the things that I saw from yesterday's video, one, interesting little point, was people brought up like, hey, why do people not complain about the price of an iPhone? Which, have you been on the internet the last couple years? Tons of people complain about iPhone prices. For instance, Apple just unveiled the iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence. Now, if you wanted to look at pricing for this, get ready for this abomination. Yeah, an iPhone 16 Pro Max starts from $11.99 US dollars, okay? So yeah, that's pretty expensive. And we're not even getting into upgrading the actual hardware or the storage. But here's the thing, I will counter you with this. You probably use your smartphone more than you use a gaming console literally every day, okay? This shouldn't really be a topic of discussion. There's a good chance that if you're buying a phone, you're using it for your personal life, your work life, you use it a heck of a lot more than you would ever use an actual gaming console, okay? Gaming consoles are used strictly for gaming. This is used for actual work, browsing the internet, doing everything in your life. But one thing that really, really hits me the hardest from this is the lack of an actual disk drive in the system. Now, I touched upon this briefly in the last video for a minute, but to give you an idea about it, this is the disk drive from PlayStation that you can buy right now at a store, okay? So for digital consoles, the actual disk drive is $80, okay? You buy this thing, you slap it into a supported console, and what you can do is then connect to the internet, basically marry the drive and the console together once, and then you basically have a disk drive attached to your digital console. Now, I believed that when the gaming console companies came out with these digital versions, like the PlayStation 5 Digital and the Xbox Series S, it was originally billed as a way to give a cheaper console to people, to enter into the space. So you save $100 on the Blu-ray drive, but you get into the same generation of consoles. Now, I think it's a pretty dangerous precedent that gaming companies are setting. See, for Microsoft and Sony, they're big businesses, okay? The last thing they care about is you as a consumer. This is why I hate shit like console wars, because people tend to get really fucking, uppity about trying to fight for their specific brand of plastic. This is big corporate America. They only care about the bottom line. They do not care about your experience, okay? Unless you actually moan for it. Now, here's the thing. When buying physical media, okay, I am playing these games actively. Games like System Shock Remake on my PlayStation, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance on my PlayStation, Final Fantasy Rebirth, I'm trying to platinum this on the PlayStation. That's a commitment right there. Spider-Man 2. I'm just going through the New Game Plus for the trophy. It's a great game. Awesome time, even though it's a little short and a very safe sequel. And of course, Final Fantasy 16, got the DLC, playing through it on the PlayStation. And of course, Astrobot, which is a very, very good platformer game that Sony made, okay? So W's where W's are. You know what the commonality between every single one of these physical discs are? You do not need the internet to play these video games, okay? So to give an idea, one of the biggest forms of weird gaslighting that I've seen on the internet in the last several years, and anybody who is in the physical media space cringes anytime they hear this. All these physical discs allegedly are just licenses, but they don't actually contain the game. No, these are 100 gigabyte Blu-ray discs that contain a 1.0 version of the game that can be played from start to end without any form of patches needed to be downloaded. Now, sure, you could download a patch and it might make the experience, better. It might fix a couple issues, might fix a couple glaring issues. But generally, when these games are printed, they are finished from beginning to end. Now, there are some exceptions, okay? Online-only MMOs. You know why I don't buy them on a fucking disc? Because I know they're online-only MMOs. That would be stupid. There are other scenarios, right? Usually when a game, specifically from EA, Ubisoft, the scum of the earth, come out and tell you, yeah, we're going to sell you Assassin's Creed Shadow, but there's going to be a download required even if you get a disc. Well, you couldn't fit
Assassin's Creed onto a disc? Well, you needed me to download something? Yeah, at that point, I don't even consider giving that company money, okay? Unless the product is used, and that's pretty much the extent of the relationship. And that's pretty much the one rare exception. Generally speaking, most games you buy nowadays in the marketplace, I would say 95% of them are all completed and finished on the disc. So Sony gives this initial, feeling to everyone, right? And even back in the PS4 days, when they were dealing with Xbox One and their shitty online practices, they basically, went up into their faces and said, hey, listen, you can just share discs around with your friends, and you don't have to worry about gaming licenses and who owns what. It's all attached to a disc. Everything in the game, all you got to do is put it into a console and just play it. Now, here's the thing. With a digital console, that's kind of the first foot in the door for these companies, Sony and Microsoft, to take away any form of ownership for these video games. And especially video games that constantly keep getting delisted. Like, imagine trying to buy a Forza game from Microsoft, and, if you don't buy it within the first couple years of its life cycle, it's never going to be sold again because car licenses are the most fickle things imaginable. So even when it comes to Microsoft in that case, I've basically given up on them trying to preserve and keep their games in a physical format. Games like Starfield, Halo Infinite, a lot of these games literally do not ship completely on the disc. You need a download to complete any of these titles. It's wild enough that even with games like Halo Infinite, they don't even ship the campaign that you can play completely offline on the disc itself. It's just a shame, and it's a spit in the face to people who want to actually preserve and keep these games down the road. Imagine if 20, 30 years ago the internet was still prominent, and games like Chrono Trigger or any of these titles back in the SNES were literally attached to online services. And if they weren't ever re-released, you could never play them again. Imagine games like Metal Gear Solid 4 that don't have a re-release to this day. Imagine if that was tied to an online-only server and you lost the ability to preserve that game. You would basically lose an entire chunk of gaming history, an entire franchise's history right there. And that's a fucking reality we have to deal with a lot of game franchises now. So the PlayStation 5 Pro, the fact that it doesn't come bundled with this disc shows me that the route that Sony wants to take is no more different than the route that Microsoft is taking. A lot of these companies benefit from the fact that when they go to a digital storefront, you have no option but to buy from their actual licensed storefront at all. Usually when you go into like a mom and pop shop or even a GameStop, you might be able to pick up a physical copy for a cheap price, okay? You might be able to pick up games down the road for like $10, $15. Good luck trying to see some of those sales make it all the way to a digital platform. The thing about even digital platforms is, compared to the PC, the Sony platform and Microsoft, they don't give you competing storefronts. It's just one storefront, and that's pretty much all it comes down to. But I think the most insulting thing about this is you don't actually even get the savings passed on to you. Like, it's crazy how a game costs $70 today, right? Like, GTA 6 is going to cost you $70 next year. It's going to cost you $70 whether you buy a physical platform version of it or you buy the digital license. And the thing is, why would you, if given the option, not buy the physical version? Are you afraid that discs are going to get scratched? Are you worried about things like space? I mean, those are valid concerns, but when it comes to owning an actual piece of product that you bought, if you're paying the same amount, what is worth more, a license and the game code you keep forever, or a digital license that could at any moment be removed from you? The game could be updated at one point that could remove certain features, certain pieces of music, especially for a game like Grand Theft Auto 6. You think when GTA 6 drops, you're going to get GTA 7 after 5 years? No, it's going to be as long of a wait as we had with GTA 5 to 6. And you can bet your ass by the time GTA 7 drops and me and you are collecting social security checks, GTA 6 might have content removed. It might have music removed. But with physical media, you get to keep that kind of stuff forever. But ultimately, long story short, the biggest problem that I see with these gaming companies is pushing the aspect of taking away that ownership, or at least trying to get it normalized. Look, I feel like if you're in a market to buy a professional product, you probably want physical media, and it baffles me why Sony is trying to nickel and dime for such a meaningful feature, right? Especially when, at the end of the day, if you're paying $1,000 anyways, what's so bad with paying the extra $50 or adding that in to slightly absorb the cost just to have actual physical media present Unless, of course, for a company like Sony, they want you to not go in that route. Because here's the thing, if they're not passing the savings on to you, $70 for them for a digital license, which costs them far less to distribute from a server to your PlayStation than having discs pressed, boxes made, shipped to storefronts, yeah, they're not passing any of these savings to you. And you bet your ass if the world goes digital, especially the gaming world, that's never going to pass to you. Even with PC gaming, with Steam, Epic Games, games on PC are still the same price as what console players are paying, day one. We don't get the savings. All right, we just literally have digital storefronts giving us digital keys. And at least in the PC's case, it's kind of a shame that there is no market for physical media that is being released in today's day and age. Unless, of course, you go with like really special releases, like I think it's Baldur's Gate 3. And even then, I don't think that version actually even shipped with a physical media component. Yeah, it's insane. But yeah, I wanted to look back into this PlayStation scam because ultimately, the price they're selling the system at, you're getting dangerously close, if not right at the market, the front door of PC gaming. And at this point, if they're turning these systems, both Microsoft and Sony, into boxes where you're just buying watered down, locked computers, why not just stick with Nintendo products? Because at least they care about physical media, even though I have my own issues with Nintendo. This is just not good. This is not a system that I like. And ultimately, I feel like digging deeper into it has just kind of made me a little bit more cynical of Sony. And one thing, for sure, this is not just me saying this. It's plenty of people in the community talking exactly. And again, if you're going to bring fanboyism into it, I want people to really counter and start a discussion in the comment section below. Because yeah, gaming is important to me. Gaming is literally one of the reasons why I make videos. And one of the things important to me with gaming is preserving the stuff that I love. If you can't preserve video games, then the future is fucking bleak. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, I'm out.